First of all, and I will leave chapter markers below if you want to skip this little intro, thank you all so much for being here. You know, all the kind comments, patrons, channel members, those of you that have been using the super thanks feature on the videos, which is a feature I've never even once talked about publicly on this channel. And generally speaking, just spending your time, your valuable time watching content that I put out, I very much appreciate it. I've been on YouTube for 12 years now, 5 or 6 of that being gaming content. And this is probably the most important period of time on my channel, and I'm just very appreciative that there's such an amazing community around this game, specifically around my channel. Now in today's video, we're gonna have a discussion on how big Baldur's Gate 3 is, and there's actually a response out there from Sven Vinca, the CEO and creative director of Larian Studios. Let's jump into it. So IGN had a chance to chat with Sven Vinca, and in this article, which I will leave a link down below in the video description, it says, speaking to IGN, Larian boss Sven Vinca said the developer is seeing a standard playthrough of BG3 take 75 to 100 hours. However, players who want to do everything should expect to double that figure. Between 75 and 100 hours, that's what we're seeing, Vinca said. That's not doing everything. That is just going to be a playthrough. There will be people who will be way over that. The ones who want to do everything, they will probably hit 200 hours, I think. On average, we're seeing people who are going through take about 75 to 100 hours. This is a pretty damn big game that we have coming here. You know, not unheard of, but definitely on the larger side of the spectrum when it comes to CRPGs and RPGs, especially for like a normal playthrough and not like someone that's trying to do 100% or a completionist or someone that just wants to experience all the content like side quests. Now, it's interesting to note that this seems to be a little bit evidence-based. So this isn't Sven just kind of guessing on his game, even though he probably has a pretty good understanding of his game. He says we're seeing people who are going through take about 75 to 100 hours. So I'm guessing that they probably have some people that are testing the game that aren't necessarily focused on searching every single nook and cranny in the game to try to find bugs and things of that nature. More so, they're just playing through kind of like a normal player and seeing how long that experience takes and, you know, reporting on how they feel about it. Now, Sven also said that those who want to do everything are looking at what he thinks to be around 200 hours. And actually, I'm going to say that that might even be an underestimate, as I know that some people have spent over 75 hours in early access alone, which is an unfinished Act 1. And I'm speaking about a single playthrough here. And that, of course, probably includes, you know, dying, trying things again, learning things, reading the books, etc. But people that play to complete everything tend to also spend more time on the little things in games like lore tidbits, inventory management, LOL. I'm thinking of Baldur's Gate 1 and 2's inventory management. That takes up a lot of time, and things of that nature. And I'll finish the article here in a second, but yeah, I'm really happy with this 75 to 200 hour number. And I'm stressing the word if here, because as much as I love Larian Studios and I trust them and I'm extremely hyped for this game, the game is still not out yet. So we don't technically know if it's going to turn out to be a great game, even though I think it's going to. But if it turns out to even be just decent, this is going to be well worth the money, in my opinion, especially when you compare it to other games in the industry that launch their games at the $60 to $70 full price range with like 12 to 20 hours of lackluster content. It's actually crazy to think about how much work is going into Baldur's Gate 3 for the price that we're paying. Like, it's pretty crazy. All right, back to the article. Vinca pointed out, however, that Larian expects to see different playstyles upon BG3's release. Those who play the game in multiplayer, for example, may take over a year to finish the game as they organize regular sessions with friends. This is just so cool to think about, especially those of you out there that play D&D with your friends, you know, once a month or once a week or whatever. It's going to be really cool to see, you know, a group of 2 to 4 friends that get together once a week or once a month and they play this game for years to come, and their campaign is just going on for that long. You always have something to look forward to. I think that's super cool to have that also be in a video game. There are multiple ways of playing it, right? Vinca said. We saw that with Divinity Original Sin 2, and it will be no different here. People who are going to be playing in multiplayer, they'll take a year and a half. They will make their regular sessions where they play like D&D. And down here, BG3 is divided up into discrete chunks by big transitions that move players from chapter to chapter. Much like in the original Baldur's Gate, these transition points provide natural stop and start moments for players who may fancy giving BG3 a rest in favor of another game. So there's a lot of games coming out later this year, and BG3 is a massive game. So, you know, if you're playing it and you only finish Act 1 in a month and then Starfield comes out and you want to play Starfield, Sven is saying that there's going to be some nice, you know, stopping points where you can take a break and then you can pick it back up when you feel comfortable without necessarily feeling like you have to start the entire game over. And for those of you that may be unaware, Baldur's Gate 3 is supposed to be 3 acts in total. Perhaps Larian will throw in like a prologue or an epilogue or something like that. But generally speaking, 3 acts in length. And right now, early access is an unfinished Act 1, so we really haven't seen the vast majority of this game yet. There will be moments where you can say, you know what, I'll stop here and try something else, and then pick it up again. It's big enough, Vinka said. Even after a playthrough is complete, players may feel compelled to re-roll due to the nature of Baldur's Gate 3 itself. It has an enormous amount of replay, because there are so many ways to do things. I think people will re-roll a lot. We have this insane amount of classes, sub-races, races, sub-races. This is not a small game you're going to be done with in a month. You will be playing it in bits and chunks. Maybe you'll drop in with a friend in multiplayer. We have drop-in/drop-out multiplayer also. There are so many ways of playing it. Let me just quickly bring up here, when he says we have this insane amount of classes, sub-races, you know, etc., some people will say, well, you know, this game has more or whatever. And fair enough, but you have to remember on a per asset basis, the amount of time, resources, money, etc. that Larian is putting into everything as an individual asset is like 3 to 4x what most, I think any CRPG company has ever done probably in the history of CRPGs. So therefore, the amount of classes and races and sub-races that they have is actually an insane amount of work. I can't stress that enough, because every single sub-race has special lines, and with those lines comes voice actors, comes this really high-quality animations, high-quality cinematics, and a lot of other CRPGs that you play, this doesn't mean that they're better or worse, but a lot of other CRPGs that you play don't even have cinematics and things of that nature, so therefore they're able to do more than you may see in Baldur's Gate 3, but technically they're not really doing more. You guys get what I'm saying, right? A CRPG that's made out of stick figures, for example, you can add another race and a million sub-races, and it doesn't add as much to development time. But when you're doing a game like Baldur's Gate 3, which has this huge focus on cinematic immersiveness in the world in a really high-quality fashion, adding another sub-race is like probably like 6 months of work. So think about that. And going back to Sven saying that this game has an enormous amount of replayability, totally believe him here, even though we don't have access to the full game, because in Act 1, in the unfinished early access Act 1, there's people that put in over 2,000 hours already into that. Now, those are pretty hardcore gamers, more hardcore than I am, even on this channel, in terms of playing Baldur's Gate 3. But it just goes to show you, in an unfinished Act 1, there's already a ton of replayability. So that 75 to 200 hours for some of you is going to turn into, I can say, easily thousands of hours of gaming, which is crazy for a game that's not a live service MMO type game. It's crazy. We saw with Divinity Original Sin 2, also, people played it for years. There are still quite a lot of people playing DOS 2, still discovering new things that are in there. This one is significantly bigger with significantly more layers of depth to it also. Also, I should point out here that Larian has tripled, more than tripled their studio size and amount of people that they employ since they started Baldur's Gate 3. And actually in the community update, we learned that they've doubled DOS 2's 5 races, bringing 11 to life in BG3 with 31 sub-races. DOS 2's 10 schools of spells is eclipsed by the 12 classes and 46 subclasses in BG3. You cause chaos with the 225 player spells and actions in DOS 2, so just imagine the havoc you're about to unleash upon Faerun with over 600 spells and actions, excluding upcasts in BG3. And then characters in DOS 2 enjoyed 45 talents against BG3's 308 passive features, which are comparable to talents. And then to end the article, I don't think you'll be done in a month is what I'm saying, which is probably true for like 80% of gamers. A lot of you guys that are still here in this video that watch all my videos, we're probably a little bit more into this than your average gamer. So some of us will probably be done within a month. I know that I will be for sure. On the first run, that is. And the last thing on this video, because it deals with what we're talking about in the PlayStation blog and also the community update, we learned that Baldur's Gate 3 has a script roughly 2 million words in length, which is pretty crazy. And then also, where is it? Somewhere around here. More than 170 hours of cinematics and featuring 3 times more cinematic dialogue than all 3 Lord of the Rings novels combined, a library of more than 600 spells and actions, and plenty more. So It's a big game. Thank you guys for joining me on this discussion. Plenty of more topics to talk about, and I'll be putting out videos throughout the month of July. And then, of course, BG3 comes out on August 3rd for us PC players. So expect beginner's guides, a Let's Play series, live streams, builds, lore videos, and all that good stuff. I'll catch you on the next one.